part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
And welcome to another edition of the Reghi Roda podcast, brought to you by MGM Northfield Park, right here on the Press Play Podcast Network. And as always, got to give a shout out to our outstanding producer, the man, the myth, the legend, who makes sure all of you out there in the podcatosphere hear this on a regular basis. That would be Ty Courts. Thanks, Ty, for what you do for the R&R podcast. And Michael, time to dive into the Cleveland Browns. 2 preseason games in the books, joint practices as we are taping this with the Philadelphia Eagles, and then they'll play them in the 3rd preseason game on Thursday night. But I think most everybody out there wants to hear what we thought of Deshaun Watson's one and only drive in the game against the Washington Commanders and some fallout from that and the practices with the Eagles. So let's start there.
Yeah, Kenny, I'm glad you mentioned this week practices with the Philadelphia Eagles because, I think that we've seen them, Philadelphia that is, as no matter how subjectively you want to look at it, one of the top 2-3 teams in the National Football League, certainly in 2022, probably going back to 2021. They are an outstanding football team on both sides of the ball. So I think this is something, and I know that Kevin Stefanski and the Browns coaching staff taking it that way, having this week to prepare and, go through game-like work against the Philadelphia Eagles, I think can do nothing but be a large help and a large assistance to what the Browns are trying to put in with their schemes, how they want to add things to both sides of the football. But Kenny, you just brought him up, and we've said this before, and I'm going to keep saying it till the cows come home. We know the NFL is a quarterback-driven league, man. If you don't have the quarterback, good luck to you trying to win consistently. I like the way it's very limited, right? It's in a short little spurt, but here's what I'm looking for from Deshaun Watson.
All right.
Decisiveness with his ability to get everyone involved. Browns are telling us they love their playmakers. They love their skill players, quadrants. Well, we're going to find out if that's going to become reality. But Deshaun Watson's got to be the trigger man of everything, Kenny. So he's got to be decisive. He's got to be a guy that understands where matchups are going to be in the Browns' favor and then go out and execute it. And again, small sample size, but I liked what we saw of him against Washington, albeit in I believe he was just on the field for that one series, was he not?
Yep.
Yeah. So, but look, I'm looking for Deshaun Watson. To me, Kenny, he's got to get back to where he was as a Houston Texans quarterback for his last couple of full seasons that he played. So it's got to be better. It's got to be better now than it was in the 6 games he played in 2022 with the Browns. He's got to be more than Deshaun Watson the last time we saw him with the Houston Texans and what he was able to accomplish with that offense.
Reg, what I saw, I liked and I hated. And this is what I mean by that. In his one series, it was, I believe, 12 plays, 67 yards. They get stopped inside the 5, almost 7 minutes. Here's what I liked. I liked that he took them down the field in various ways, throwing, handing off, and running the football himself. And I believe in a regular season situation, 3rd and goal from the 1, he's probably, in a run pass option there as the quarterback. They don't want to use that so much in the preseason. And on 4th and 1 there, I think they're going to score in the regular season with him and Nick Chubb in there, as opposed to him not running the football and having the 4th and 5th string running backs in there. So what I didn't like was in a preseason game, the fact that he had to run for 20 yards, Reg. Every time he tucked the ball and ran, I was holding my breath because I didn't want him getting hurt. But that puts it on film that opposing defenses, here's what I do. Here's what you're going to have to prepare for now. And a full year under his belt, full off season under his belt. He's the main man, no off-field distractions, knock on wood. So I like that he was running because it showed, but it scared me because I don't want him getting hurt in a meaningless preseason game. And hopefully he comes out of these practices with Philadelphia okay. He will not play in Thursday night's game against the Eagles, but may get a series or two in the final game against Kansas City, from what Kevin Stefanski said. And then, of course, they open things up on September 10th at home against the Cincinnati Bengals, who might not have Joe Burrow due to that. We like to call it the Lonnie Chisenhall injury on the Kenny and JT show on WHBC, because nobody had more calf injuries than Lonnie Chisenhall. So that calf injury could keep him out in week one. And that would give the Browns a big advantage, especially at quarterback in that game. But I loved what I saw out of Deshaun Watson in that one series, one drive. I thought he showed everything that he has in his arsenal.
When you look at the totality of the Browns offense, and I'll start with that offensive line, who, Kenny, subjectively, I think, I'm going to say top 8. I'm going to put him at 8 in the National Football League. And that's a firm belief of mine. This is a very good offensive line. Now, you get Elijah Moore in here, and I know Moore had an injury,
bruised ribs.
But he's going to be, I think, a huge factor, probably more in the slot than anything else. But, adding him to this offense, we know where Nick Chubb is going to be with the run game. With now no Kareem Hunt, they're going to have to find someone that can get those, 6, 8, 9 carries a game when Nick Chubb needs a blow on offensive possessions. But I feel very, very good about this offense. And I do feel, and I hope I'm not being pie in the sky, but that, again, I'm a pretty harsh grader when it comes to these sort of things.
Yep.
I feel good that Deshaun Watson is going to get back closer. I don't know if he's going to be exactly what he was when he threw for 4,700 yards, and I was at 28 touchdowns during his final full season with the Houston Texans. But Kenny, I feel good with everything around him and how Kevin Stefanski and Brett Van Pelt want to do things offensively. They've got a lot of opportunity, I think, to really expand, right, this offensive diagram, the way they go about things, with Deshaun Watson, if he's more of Deshaun Watson that we saw as a Houston Texan.
Reg, for me, they'll go as far as he takes them. He even said that in a press conference, but the receiving core is still my biggest question mark on offense. I believe in the line. I believe in Chubb. I believe in Watson. David Njoku, okay, maybe he's my second concern, but my concern is, can they all stay healthy already? Marquise Goodwin, don't know when he's going to return because of the blood clots. The ribs, hopefully they're just bruised and nothing more for Elijah Moore, because it looks like maybe they might want to use him in the Percy Harvin style when Stefanski was in Minnesota, out of the backfield, catching balls, running balls, and things of that nature. So
very good call by you, by the way. Excellent.
Oh, thank you.
Very good call. Yes.
So those two guys,
Percy Harvin, yes.
Yeah, they have to be a factor in the pass game. Donovan Peoples-Jones needs to continue to take the next step of being that, if he is the number 2 receiver this year. And Amari Cooper, surprisingly, I was reading some of the things online, had some drops yesterday in that first practice against the Eagles, but I'll leave it at this. Trying to stay healthy, Amari Cooper, maybe not completely focused on catching balls, and I don't know if they were in traffic or not, but he doesn't want to get hurt before the season starts. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt because of the season he had last year. But for me, offensively, Reg, that's my biggest concern, is can that receiving core, produce for Deshaun Watson and this offense that Kevin Stefanski, I've got to believe, will try and use the pass game more now that he has Watson and what they think is a much improved receiving core.
Without question, to all of that. And look, Amari Cooper is a strong number 1 receiver for the Cleveland Browns. Now you'd say, well, Reggie, but On some teams, he may be not. Well, yeah. On some teams, he might be the number 2. Well, sure. If you got Justin Jefferson, I guess you're going to be Cooper be the number 2. But I have no qualms with Amari Cooper, and I feel good and certainly feel very able to say that when the bell rings, Amari Cooper is going to be there doing what he does best, running good routes, catching the football, 7, 8, 9 times a game, and hopefully this year getting in the end zone a little bit more for the Cleveland Browns at the red zone. That's the one thing I hope that both he and Donovan Peoples-Jones would to improve upon is red zone touchdown catches. A lot of that goes into Deshaun Watson as well. Kenny, who's stepping up now to take that Kareem Hunt role that Hunt has played for the Browns? Now, again, you think, well, that's not big. Listen, folks, no, you can't. Nick Chubb can't carry the football 30-plus times every game. No, you got to get every number 1 running back gets a little bit of a blow, and if you look at it, most of those backup running backs carry the football 6, 8, 9 times a game. Who's going to do that for the Cleveland Browns?
They want it to be Jerome Ford. Now, he's got a hamstring injury
Right.
he's dealing with right now. That's why he did not play in the game against the Commanders. Demetric Felton and Kelly were the 2 running backs on that opening drive down near the goal line that got stopped. So Jerome Ford would have been in there with the opportunity to score that touchdown, with Nick Chubb taking a breather in that second preseason game. So they want it to be Jerome Ford. They want him to spell Nick Chubb, like you said, 5 to 10 carries or routes combined, right? If he's coming out of the backfield to catch the football, they hope he can be that guy. And then Demetric Felton is still hanging on because he's a draft pick, right? And they don't have anybody else. There's no Dearness Johnson anymore as the number 3 guy waiting in the wing. So they're trying to not only find the Kareem Hunt guy, the number 2 guy, but also the Dearness Johnson guy, the number 3 guy. So right now, Jerome Ford looks to be number 2 when healthy. And I think it's going to be Demetric Felton as the number 3 guy, unless they pick somebody up off the free agent wire when somebody gets cut, Reg.
Yeah, well, that's a possibility, although I think a slight one. Jerome Ford's got to be the guy. So again, now here's his opportunity to step up and say, hey, everybody else, get behind me in line, because this backup running back to Chubb, I'm taking those 6, 8, 9 carries each and every week. So I'm looking at that. Ford's got to be the guy that takes charge with that. Kenny, let's defensively there. We've discussed the linebacking core, quite a bit. They're not overly physical. They're not a bunch of real thumpers. Quite frankly, they're on the smallish side. What about the defensive side of the ball? Do you have any shortcomings, misgivings that come to mind to you in terms of how Andrew Berry has put the roster together defensively for Kevin Stefanski and his D coaches?
I do. And a major concern, Michael Reghi, on the defensive side of the ball and with special teams. And when we come back on the R&R podcast, look at that tease. I will share with you and our listeners where my concern is on defense and on special teams. I think you'll get a kick out of it on special teams, Michael Reghi. And we'll do all that when the R&R podcast, brought to you by MGM Northfield Park, returns right here on the Press Play Podcast Network.
What's up, everyone? I'm Holly Wetzel.
And I'm Tybus Powell.
And we are your hosts of The Orange is Oranger, a Cleveland Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network. We give you all the dog pound coverage that you'll need to get you through the regular season, hopeful postseason, and I'd say off-season, Tybus, but is there really ever an off-season for this team?
Thankfully for our podcast, Holly, there really never is when it comes to the Cleveland Browns. Don't miss our breakdown of each week's matchup, game recaps, and any and all news out of Berea to feed your Browns appetite. As we know, Holly, dogs gotta eat.
Yes, they do. So hit that subscribe button and never miss an episode of the Orange is Oranger, Cleveland Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, it's Sam Amico from Cavs on the Break NBA podcast. Be sure to give us a listen for all your Cleveland Cavaliers recaps, analysis, breakdowns, draft talk, free agency. The list goes on and on. Give us a listen, Cavs on the Break NBA podcast.
Hey, the Roadman Kenny Roda here for the R&R podcast, and a shout out to our sponsor, MGM Northfield Park. Love having them on board once again this year, but hey, check this out. It started on Monday, August 14th. There will be a 2-week live racing break at MGM Northfield Park, so no live racing between August 14th through the 25th. Live racing will return to MGM Northfield Park on Saturday, August 26th with at 6 p.m. post time, and as always, free admission, free parking every day at Northfield Park, returning on Saturday, August 26th.
Looking for new insights on the Cleveland sports scene with a unique side of Cleveland sports history? Then you found the perfect podcast. I'm John Sable.
And I'm Scott Sable, and we're hosts of the Sable Brothers on the Baseline podcast, a podcast about Cleveland sports, but not your typical podcast about the land's sports teams. Join us as we embark on a journey of sharing a unique and historical side of Cleveland sports history with the help of some former Cleveland sports stars and other historical figures.
All right here on the Sable Brothers on the Baseline podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
And we continue with the Reghi and Roda podcast here on the Press Play Podcast Network, brought to you by MGM Northfield Park. Love Brent Reitz and the gang at Northfield Park for being a part of the R&R podcast. Once again, thank you. Looking for a good time, no doubt. Head on out to MGM Northfield Park. All right, Michael Reghi, my concern on defense and special teams, I'm going to give you the two areas where I am concerned right now. Linebacker. Didn't address it in the offseason. Now Jacob Phillips is out for the season with a torn pectoral muscle. That is a major concern for me. I know, Anthony Walker and Sione Takitaki participated in day one of the joint practices with the Eagles, so that should help a little bit, but I don't look at them as game changers, impact players on the defensive side of the ball. I just look at them as, all right, 1 and 2 maybe on the depth chart for the Browns, which doesn't say much. So Jacob Phillips to me wasn't an impact guy either, but, they were expecting big things out of him after drafting him out of LSU, and he has failed to deliver because his availability isn't there. He's always hurt. So for me, I thought they ignored the linebacker position, and it may come back to bite him right now. And then Cade York on special teams, we'll kick him around a little bit later on. But your thoughts on the linebackers?
To begin with, I was very, very surprised that that wasn't a position group that Andrew Berry did much more with, as you just alluded to, buddy, than he did. It surprised me to no end because, and then I've had people tell me, though, well, Reghi, linebacker is kind of like the defensive now equivalent to the running back position in the NFL. Okay. It's just not that highly thought of as a huge need. Baloney. Please, I'm sorry. You call me any old man curmudgeon you want. I'm sorry, man. Show me a team that wins that's won without a solid or strong linebacking core. You gotta have guys. You gotta have at least one, Kenny, who can get in the A and B gaps and pretty much, add that extra down D lineman to the run game, meaning put hits on running backs. The last time I looked, you could tell me all you want about running back now being a declining area. Every NFL team still runs a football 20 to 30 times a game, if not more, right? So some of them more. So, no, you need linebackers that give you oomph, man, that could come up and pad up on people and knock people down. Again, now that's got it. One of my, I love Andrew Berry. I think he's been terrific as a Browns GM, but that's the one area I'm going to give Andrew a C at the very best for.
Yeah. You
just laid it out, partner. I don't think he's done enough to augment this linebacking core of this football team. You got one of the top three going down.
Right.
Now what?
Well,
now what? Is that going to be
Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah? That's what he's going to have to step up and have a major impact year, right?
Yes, right now, absolutely. We just mentioned the possibility of, I don't know, as we get closer to that second weekend in September, opening weekend in the NFL, and we're not that far from it right now. Kenny, I got to think that maybe Barry's got to make a move there and bring in a linebacker that, again, if you want to say that, is more suited to play against, stand up strong and be a run stopper to help than he is maybe as a coverage guy. Again, the linebacker position for me is probably my greatest concern to anyone not named Cade York.
Okay, and we're going to get to Cade here in just a second, but their theory, Reg, is this, from what I've been able to ascertain. Myles Garrett, Delvin Tomlinson, Zadarius Smith, Ogo Okoronkwo, Maurice Hurst. Who's the guy they picked up this week, too? They added another defensive line lineman. And
yes, they did.
I'm drawing a blank, but they added another veteran defensive line, right?
Yeah.
So their theory is linebacker not as important as a rotation of maybe 7 or 8 guys on that defensive line. That's where they think they're going to make up for not having the thumper as far as, the linebacker goes. They think they can get by with Anthony Walker if he's back healthy, with Sione Takitaki and the guy that they're, using as a hybrid safety linebacker, whatever, in Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. So that's where they think they're making up for it. But you look at Alex Wright and Isaiah Thomas, both underwent knee scopes, right? Yeah. And so they're out for a while, don't know how long. So that weakens some of the depth for them. Is Siaki Ika going to step up and play as a rookie and make an impact? I don't know.
Unknown, right?
Yeah.
Hey, listen, I hope they're right and I'm wrong. I'll say that right up front, because if they're right and I'm wrong, that is going to add a lot of luster and oomph more than anything else to that defensive unit. Juan Thornhill, Kenny, I like that. I think he is going to play more around the line of scrimmage from one of his safety spots, I think, probably than we've been used to seeing. But what's that doing, though? Okay, you're saying then do we have to make this, they'll call it a slight adjustment, but what's that for? That's to help combat the run game of the opposition. And now are you detracting a little bit from what you're doing coverage-wise in the back end? See, all that to me kind of goes hand in hand,
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more, Reg. And, we'll see how this defense comes together and whether or not, with Jim Schwartz pulling the string. And maybe that's the other thing they're counting on, right? You're a guy.
Do like him. Do like him a lot.
May the Schwartz be with you. Are they counting on him to take what they have and be a major upgrade in coaching over Joe Woods?
Yes. Well, I will say this about Jim Schwartz. Don't try to bring it meek and mild and scared, because you ain't going to last long with Jim Schwartz if you're intending to play for his defensive unit. So I like that. I do think Schwartz is going to give them that type of feel, Kenny. He's going to demand it. And again, if you don't, then he's basically going to tell you got to go sit over there because you can't play for me. And that I like, because it's something I think that's necessary for this defensive unit to take the next step. And I'm very pleased that Jim Schwartz is the man that's going to put this all together and see if he can take those steps. And Kenny, we're going to have to really look at, I know you on the R&R each Sunday after Browns games, man, we're going to keep a close eye on this linebacking core and see what Schwartz is able to do with it, because it's not the most talented, shall we say, in the National Football League. So coaching may have a lot to do with performance and how things play out there.
Shelby Harris, by the way, the other defensive lineman that they picked up, signed into a one-year deal worth $5.25 million. He's bounced around, but Seattle. So we'll throw in Shelby Harris to that mix of 7 or 8 defensive linemen that Jim Schwartz will be working with. All right, let's go to the special teams, Reg. And so far, 0 for 2 on field goals.
Yeah.
A 49-yarder in the Hall of Fame game he missed, and then a 46-yarder last week at home, his home field, against the Washington Commanders. He missed 8 last year. I think that was either first or tied for first for most misses of field goals, missing 8 field goals last year in his rookie season. We're talking about Cade York, and as of right now, Reg, nobody else in camp challenging him. How big of a week of practice is this for Cade York? And then Thursday night, he's a starter. He's going to play. He's going to get his kicks, extra points, and field goals. How big of a game is this for Cade York on Thursday night against the Eagles?
What's that word that I've heard you, partner, combine for years and years? Ginormous?
Yes.
Is that what you call it? Ginormous?
Okay, fair enough.
It's that, Kenny Roda. It's that. Come on now. I mean, this guy was a draft pick. How many organizations, how many general managers use a draft pick on kickers in the NFL?
Right.
And I mean, so again, Andrew Berry felt that this young man is special, and Kenny, I'm very concerned now. Color Reghi, very, very concerned about Cade York's ability. How can you say right now, I don't care if they're at Cleveland Browns Stadium or not. Fourth quarter, tight football games, which the Browns are going to play a lot of, right?
Right.
Every NFL team does. Man, you got to have a guy that you know can, from inside 50, right, is going to go 8 of 10, if not 9 of 10.
Yep.
You feel that way about Cade York?
No, not at all, Reg. And that's a major concern. If you're talking about making the playoffs, winning a division, winning a playoff game, Cincinnati got to the Super Bowl with a rookie kicker because McPherson made those kicks, right?
Yes, he did.
And so that's a big factor in close games, as you pointed out. And there are at least a handful of close games. 5 out of the 17 are probably going to be one possession games, if not more, when you're a good team and you're trying to make the playoffs. So he needs to, you're right, ginormous is a perfect way to describe the weeks ahead for, the kicker, Cade York. And I saw a list of free agent kickers that are out there and some teams that have 2 kickers in camp.
Should Andrew Berry do it right now, Ken?
What's that?
Right now? Should he do it right now,
Ooh.
still with a couple weeks left? Or do you think this will jack the kid up even more between the ears?
I
don't think you can worry about that BS.
Right. Exactly. You have to worry about the team more than the ego and the fact that he was a draft pick, right?
Yep.
You need to do what's best for the team. And I'll tell you what, Reg, if he can't handle the pressure of bringing in another kick, what's he going to do when the game's on the line in the regular season under pressure? So find out if he can handle the pressure by bringing somebody in right now after this week's game if he misses a kick, extra point, or field goal.
Touche. If you're worried about his frail confidence factor or whatever his ego may be, then how in the hell can you say you feel good about lining him up from 48 when you're down by 1 or 2 on the last possession of the football game? How can you feel good about that? Yeah. You can't, if you're being honest. Bring someone in right now and see if Cade York can rise to the moment and show everybody that this is my job and I'm not letting anybody come in here and take it, mess with it, and I'm going to help us win football games. Because, Kenny, you can't afford, especially, let's just say the first 4 games a year, you can't afford to have it come down, 2 games come down to him on the running out with the field goal unit and him missing. You can't afford that, man. There's only 17 of these. This isn't the damn Major League Baseball or the NBA. You got 17. You lose 1 or 2 like that, you're probably not going to get where you need to be.
Reg, I'm still not comfortable with him on extra points, let alone field goals.
There you go.
He missed 2 extra points last year as well, 10 total kicks, 8 field goals, 2 extra points. So you late in the game, Deshaun Watson leads a game-tying drive. You go down, score, it's tied, or it's 24-23. He needs to make the extra point to tie it, send it to overtime, and he shanks a kick. He pushes one right like he's done with the 2 field goals. You can't have that. So, yeah, I'm concerned, and I'm not worried about how fragile mentally he is. If he can't handle some competition, then you don't want him as your kicker, whether you drafted him or not, Reg.
Here, 1,000,000%. And again, so this is where now we're seeing a little bit about Andrew Berry as well.
Yeah.
So are you willing to give this guy that you drafted to be your guy more rope, more leeway, a little bit more of an opportunity to potentially work himself out of some doldrums? To my way of thinking, yeah, well, if you do, it can't last for long if he doesn't show you he's capable, and you better be ready to do something, Andrew Berry. Again, I think if you're an R&R listener, you know both Reghi and Roda are Andrew Berry guys. But that doesn't mean that, nobody does 100%. And again, linebacking core and this Cade York situation, I got to be watching Andrew Berry very closely now, because if you don't think the moves he decides to or not make could be a huge factor in how this 23 season winds up for the Browns, then I just don't think you got a real good feel for the National Football League then, folks.
Couldn't agree more with you, Red. So we'll see how this plays out. And hey, the best way to put that to rest is to, in these, and I don't know how much they're kicking in these joint practices, but make all your kicks there, make all your kicks Thursday night, and then make your kicks in the Kansas City game, regain that confidence. I think their fear is if we give up on them too soon. We've seen some young kickers, go through a tough year or two, and then they figure it out. If we give up on them too soon, it's a wasted pick, and then it's going to come back to bite us. And that's what they're debating right now. But in a year where you must make the playoffs as a head coach, or your job might not be there the following season, if I'm Stefanski and he has another shaky week, I'm going to Andrew Berry and saying, hey, yeah, go bring somebody in right now. Go see who's out there that's a veteran that isn't signed right now, or somebody that may be cut because they brought two into camp on another team and they're going with a younger guy or something like that. Get me a veteran kicker I can rely on if needed.
Yep, you have to, because, again, you start losing a couple football games, and especially early because of your field goal kicker. Yeah. Kenny, there's nothing that tears apart, right? I don't know what, other than maybe if there's a quarterback dilemma, but there's not. Players know if games are winnable, right? Players know at the end of those 60 minutes, that's when we should have won if you didn't. And the reason why. And if you got a field goal kicker missing makeable field goals, and as you brought up, buddy, extra points, well, then you know what? I'm going to show you a divided and divisive locker room.
He went from Thunderfoot hitting the game winner against Carolina to Blunderfoot, missing 8 field goals and 2 extra points, and he's off to a very shaky start right now in this preseason for the Cleveland Browns and Cade York. So definitely something to keep an eye on. Anything else, Reg, on the Browns before we wrap things up here on this R&R podcast?
Well, again, just to reiterate, Kenny, I'm hoping they used it. They should come up with a lot of positives this week just by this week spent with the Philadelphia Eagles. Because, again, this is one of the quality football teams in the NFL, I think, as most of us are aware of. And I'm looking for that to be a large benefit, Ken, for the Browns overall, to what they do and things that they say, okay, that this is how our approach can work. These are some things that will not work against quality teams like the Eagles. So use this week, even probably, Kenny, the week more than the ensuing game, right? The week that they're going for 5 days against Philadelphia. And so there's going to be a lot of, ones versus ones during times, right? And, it's got to be a week that the Browns use to their strong advantage as a week to get better, and hopefully they can do that.
And how about this, Reg? They closed the preseason with practices and a game against Philadelphia and a game against Kansas City. Oh, the two teams that played in last year's Super Bowl. So maybe they'll get a little idea when the ones go against the ones against the Eagles and Kansas City, if that happens in that game. of where they stack up and what they might need to address. So, hey, it's going to be a fun season, and we're going to be all over it here on the R&R podcast. We'll be breaking it down for you, giving you our thoughts post-game wise, as well as simple regular podcast, breaking down what we think needs to be done for the Cleveland Browns to be successful this year and with college football this year as well. So a lot to get to. Should be a lot of fun, Reg. I'm looking forward to another year of R&R breaking down the NFL and the Browns.
Yeah, buddy, as am I. And as you said, we're going to be all over it and can't wait for it to start. And we're counting days down now for that to be the case for both the NFL, the Browns season, and college football. So we're going to just know, all of you, that R&R will be going guns a-blazing when the football starts flying around for real coming up very soon.